Chief Executive of the Local Government Authority, Mohamed Nimal, Resident Representative for UNDP in Maldives, Enrico Gavelia, friends and colleagues from the Local Government Authority, the Maldives Institute for Local Governance, the UNDP and the British High Commission. Salam alaikum and good morning. First of all, let me start by saying how much I have valued in the 5 years that I've been here the fantastic partnership that the British High Commission has had with the UNDP and also the Local Government Authority. I remember from my early time here, which was just pre-COVID and then going into the COVID year, that we were working together then on the issue of women in local governance, and the Kieveni portal that we developed then provided a very timely and helpful way for women in particular to access training and development online that would be something that they could productively work on during the difficult COVID time. Turning to today's report, first of all, it's really helpful to have research. And as we know, in Maldives, it's often overlooked in international studies. It's very hard to find good data on Maldives. So it's really helpful to have something that's done by Maldives and in Maldives. And it really gives us that granularity. And it's very helpful for members of the international community. My successor will start here early next year, and a report like this is very rich information and data on which to base our thinking and engagement with partners in Maldives. And if you don't have the evidence, then your case will always fall prey to what we've known these days as whataboutery. Whatever you say about what women need in terms of representation in the country, someone will come up and say, but what about men? Why don't we have a men's day and all that kind of thing? And people will cite individual examples that they feel and believe undermine the overall case that you're making. So it's really helpful to fall back on evidence. And these sentiments were expressed quite noticeably in the two-day induction training course that Westminster Foundation for Democracy provided to Majlis members, most of whom were new, of course, this year. And that's a body where women represent about 3% of the membership, and still there was quite a strong objection from quite a few MPs about the emphasis we were placing on the importance of women being involved in governance. Chief Executive, I'm very glad that you mentioned good news right at the beginning of your remarks, because in the last year, I suppose, have shifted my news consumption more consciously towards good news and choose to focus on what's going right rather than the endless stream of what's going wrong in the world. That doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the many problems that exist, but that I'm choosing to focus on solutions. And the more we read about and see examples of what's working, the more we will feel inspired and encouraged to build on these things. So this report is very rich in informative detail, and it shares a good set of recommendations that will be good for us to share with all partners, and certainly I will be talking to my fellow members of the Diplomatic Corps about it and encouraging them to think about how they can add their shoulder to the support for this. And as the very good and succinct presentation outlined, I think the broad message from the report for me is that good news story that the majority of women who were able to get into positions of government as a result of positive action and quite a brave decision by the government at the time, was criticised, of course, have been able to contribute successfully. So there's something there for everyone to build on. And second, yes, there is that unacceptably large minority, I would describe it as, who found it so difficult to participate that they decided to leave. And it would be really helpful to know more about what their experience was. It must have been pretty tough for them to leave, and pretty tough that none of them really wanted to talk about their reasons for it. So that is something I would categorize as something to chip away at. And then it's easy for us to quietly work on that part that stands out as bad news, those who were effectively hounded out of their positions or felt they were just unable to pursue that activity and support a family, for example. So it's important to address that, as the report acknowledges. There's one additional action I think we can take, which is to publicly focus on the vast majority who were able to make a positive contribution. That's really something to talk about in an everyday way. If we can celebrate, promote, and explain this, we will be providing concrete examples of how women can improve communities and contribute to society when they're given the chance. And usually that is to the benefit of everyone rather than a select group. So what can we do with this information? Well, I think advancing women's inclusion requires 4 things that were recommended in this report. First of all, making space, policy reforms and other structural reforms that create a space for women to step into, building their confidence and training and mentoring and encouraging. I was very heartened to see how many women talked about the role, supporting role that their families played by and large, and that's something we should also really recognise and acknowledge. It used to be that they say behind every great man is a woman, but maybe behind every great successful woman there is a whole family. We can thirdly be quietly promoting positive examples of women delivering for the country, which, as I've said, the communication aspect. And then fourthly, I think importantly as well, something I've reflected on particularly in the last year or so is I think it's probably beneficial here to avoid confrontation or explicitly addressing this as an issue of gender, which tends to provoke conflict and negative reactions from some. And it sometimes kind of diverts the argument into other issues that really we don't want to focus on. We were trying to focus on equality of participation. In conclusion, let me return to the overall point of good news. Despite the noise that there was about that 33% quota, women have been able to demonstrate their value and their contribution that they can make to society. I should say we can make. I'm one of them, aren't I? And let us certainly work on some of the areas for development, particularly interesting to see that regional variance, which I think is quite understandable in some ways. But overall, fantastic news and really helpful to have this research that tells us the answer to that question everyone was asking when the 33% quota was first announced. Thank you very much.